Hi, beautiful souls. It's Tan back here again today with you on this Astrology, Human Design, and Jinkies channel. And today I'm going to be doing a story time kind of a video because I feel like sharing stories. And I think that I've been influenced by Sarah, who is an astrologer on the Tan Astrology team, because she loves to tell stories. She loves to read stories and mythologies and things. And I just absorbed her energy. And I feel like I want to share some stories with you guys today. And you guys did give me some ideas. So here's going to be one of those stories that I'm telling. And it's a beautiful morning today. I have my tea with me. I like to drink tea in the morning rather than coffee nowadays. So I thought that the story that I could tell you guys today would be about a past relationship that I was in that was abusive. So, if you've been on the channel for a while, you might have already heard that I have been in some abusive relationships. But in this story time, I want to expose that to you and get down with the details of it. And I do feel that abuse in a relationship is linked to codependency, especially in this case that when I was in this abusive relationship. It's definitely linked to codependency. So I want to talk about them as being one in this video and how that has played out in my life. All right, let's get started. This abusive codependent relationship that I was in happened in the year 2014. Man, that was 8 years ago. Time flies. But yes, I've been wanting to share the story since maybe like 2018 or 2019, but I don't think that I was fully healed from that yet. But now I am. And I want to share that. I'm coming from a place of a little bit more peace now and sharing this with you guys. So the timing is absolutely right. So from 2014 and 2016 was when this relationship happened. I met my ex, we'll just call him my ex, on October of 2014. And there wasn't really anything very, it wasn't like love at first sight or anything like that. It was just like somebody that I met and we went out for, I think we went for a walk together. It was like, it didn't really feel like anything special at the time, but I felt dark energy coming from this person who was my ex. And I'll tell you why I felt dark energy coming from this person. Okay, so when I met him, I was sort of dating somebody else at that time. But the person that I was dating wasn't with me. Like it was a long distance thing and it wasn't really a relationship. It was just kind of like I was sort of dating this person, but like not really, kind of like that. Because it was like it was long distance, right? So it's like I don't really know what he's doing. He doesn't really know what I'm doing. So, but my ex, after about like I can't remember, it was a week or a few days of meeting me, sent me a message and said, I want you to leave this other person. At the time, I was kind of like, sure, because I wasn't really like in a relationship or anything. It was just like having fun with this other person. But he was like, I want you to leave this other person. And not only did he message me to tell me that, but he came over to my apartment without telling me that he was coming over. So he was getting on the elevator and called me and said, I'm here at your apartment. And that was within the first week of meeting. And so I said, oh, okay, why are you here and everything? And it's like, I want to talk to you about something very serious. And so he came up and then he said, I want you to break up with this other person. I want you to leave them because I'm feeling not good that you are maybe seeing somebody else. And I was like, okay, it's over. Like there's nothing happening anymore, And I was feeling this darkness, right? This forcefulness coming up a little bit. At that time, he was a student. So he was doing his master's studies, and he was living with a friend quite far away from where I lived. It's like on the outskirts of the city. I think about maybe a month into our sort of dating relationship from the first day that we met, I went out. I remember this very clearly. I went out with my colleagues after work. We went to a trivia night at a bar. And so we were answering some trivia questions. And I think it was about 9 p.m. or 9:30 p.m. that the trivia finished. And then I came back home. And my ex sent me messages and called me and said, "Why are you home so late?" And I was like, I was at a trivia night with my colleagues. And he was like, "Are you sure you're with your colleagues?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "I don't want you to go out with your colleagues anymore. I don't want you to go out late with your colleagues anymore." Because according to him, 9 o'clock was late. So I was like, "Okay, fine. I will not do that." So that was another incident that happened. And then I think there was also another incident where I went out with my students because at that time I was an English teacher and I was teaching English in Malaysia. So a majority of my students were adults. I was teaching English to adults and they were from the Middle East. So they were um, either from Saudi Arabia, from, Oman, from Jordan, and they were Muslim. They were Sunni Muslim. This is going to get very controversial and religious, but my ex at the time was Iranian and he was a Shia Muslim. So if you are familiar with the sect of this religion, you'll know that they sometimes don't see eye to eye with certain things. But my ex was quite an extreme with that. So what happened was that one day I went out with my students as a group. It was like there was like 10 people, me and like 10 other students. We went out for dinner. And of course, my ex saw pictures that was posted on Facebook and he asked, "Where are your students from?" And I was like, "Oh, they're from, the Middle East and blah, blah, blah." And then he was like, "I don't want you to go out with your students anymore." And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "I don't like Arabs." So I was like, I can't remember, but I guess we had a pretty big fight about that. But I ended up saying yes to it. I ended up saying, "All right, fine." Just to end everything, like, I won't do it. So, when I finish telling you guys the story, I'm gonna go over the lessons, the themes, and the signs of abuse and codependency, and maybe some tips for you guys as well if you are seeing similar patterns in your relationships or have been through something like this. So that was another incident. And then about 3 months into our relationship, he came to me and said, "Let's move in together." After 3 months, he said, "Let's move in together." And I was like, "Oh, why?" And he was like, "Well, I really love you and I want us to be together, but also I'm kind of not really having the money to pay rent right now," because he was a student, like I said, for his master's and he was living with his friend and he didn't like his living situation. I went there once and I thought it was like not so bad, but he basically had his own room, his friend had his own room, and they had a living room that they shared, right? But for him, he just wanted to have his own space. He didn't even want to share a living room with anybody else or a bathroom or a kitchen or anything. So I thought, okay, we can do it out of love, but I'll also do it as a way of helping him as well. So let's move in together. And then he also made this really intelligent argument. He was calculating the cost, the rent that I was paying for my apartment. And he searched some new apartments and said, "If we live together, we can stay in the studio apartment and it would cost just a few ringgit, a few hundred ringgits more than the one that you're staying in right now, in which you are sharing with somebody else." Because I was also sharing with somebody else, right? But anyway, so we found a studio apartment and we moved in together. And of course, because of the way that everything was, the person who was paying for the rental of this new apartment was me. So we were living together. All his things were there, all my things were there, but I was paying for the rent every month. Um, so a couple of weeks into living together, and I can't even remember what this was about, but we had an argument about something. We fought all the time, by the way, guys, in this relationship. So we had an argument about something, and I think I called him a bastard or something. I just called him something like, oh, I called him maybe a dick or something for that argument that we were having. And he got really angry at me for that. He was like, how dare you call me that? And he took my phone. Or was it his phone? Can't remember whose phone it was. He took someone's mobile phone and threw it into the clothes closet in our bedroom that was made of glass. So he threw that phone in there, and the closet, the glass shattered and, you know, broke and flew all over the bedroom. And I cleaned it up. And after that, I had a talk with him and I said, I don't like this behavior. Like, you're violent, and I've had um some traumas in the past with my father who was once showing a sign of violence to my mom, and I don't like it. You remind me of that, and I don't want you to do it again. If you do it again, I'm going to leave you. So he said, okay, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not even sure he really apologized. But so that was the first time that there was some kind of violence going on in the household. Something else that also came up in our relationship was my social media accounts. Yes, I remember this very well. I think we went on one trip together. We went traveling once in our whole relationship in 2 years, which I totally hated because I have like a Sagittarius descendant and I'm like, I want to travel with my partner. But he was like, I don't have money. Okay, whatever. So we traveled once in our entire relationship to the beach. It wasn't very far away. We took a bus, we went to the beach, and I uploaded some photos on Facebook of our trip. And I think something triggered something within him. And he was like, I don't want you to go on Facebook and I don't want you to go on Instagram because your students who were Arabs were following you on Facebook and Instagram. And and by the way, just to let you guys know, like I loved my students. Like they were the heart of my life. Like all of them, no matter where they were from, what religion they were, because I had, students from Japan, from Korea, from the Middle East, from Kazakhstan. Like I had students coming from various different parts of the world, and I loved all of them. And but yeah, this was like the situation. This was the conflict here. So yeah, so then he was like, because your students, your Arab students, are following you and are friends with you on Facebook and Instagram. So I don't want you to post on there anymore because you never know what they're going to do with your photos. So I closed my Instagram and I closed my Facebook and didn't post anymore on those two accounts. And that's why I now have two Facebook accounts. But anyways, so that was the situation there. So this isolation theme began to become much more apparent. Now, I don't want to say that like this whole relationship was filled with these restrictive, abusive types of situations. There were parts of it that was filled with romance, of course. There were parts of it that was, just funny and we had good times together. But there were also parts of it that was like these various different situations that I'm telling you guys right now. Now, I wanted to share a little bit about the sex life of me and my ex here. Um, what happens in the bedroom was that my ex was sort of like, I think he had like his ego tied to his sexual performance, like a big large part of it. So if I didn't orgasm during a sexual intercourse, he would get very angry. He would be like, what's going on? Like, why are you not having this? So I would fake my orgasm every time I had sex, by the way. And that was also something I'm not proud of. And I would never do that ever again. Like I really learned a big lesson from that. But yeah, I would just fake it. And I don't think he ever found out. Because I was scared. Like I was scared of like this person just being angry at me. And this is the thing about codependency, which I'll talk about later on towards the end of the video. I was just really fearing. I had a lot of fears about this person leaving me. So I was willing to do a lot of things just to keep them around because I was codependent, right? Um, and then I think we had a really huge fight with our neighbor in that first apartment that we lived in together. Um, so we moved. The neighbors were noisy, and my ex was just annoyed every time. And then I think he went over, and they were having a big argument and stuff. And so he felt like it was not safe to be there. Also, because the neighbors were Arabs. So we moved to a new apartment, which was a little bit more expensive than the first one, but it was in a better environment. But I was still paying for the rent. And there was this one incident so I used to have this student and he was in my classes, but then he went back to his country, his home country. And then he came back to Malaysia to do more studies. So when he came back to Malaysia, he called me on my phone and said, "Hey, Teacher Tan, like, how are you doing? Let's meet up." And my ex heard me, on the phone. So he took the phone out of my hands and said some really nasty things to my students, like, "Who the F are you? Like, who the fuck are you? Don't ever fucking call where are you from? Of course. Where are you from? Don't ever fucking call my girlfriend again." And I was like, what are you doing? You're so rude. Like, what is going on? And and then he took my phone and threw it on the floor and it broke. So I had to get a new phone. But not only did he do that, but he also punched his uh desk, like the desk that he was using to work and study on, until there was like a hole in it. So yeah, I can't remember what happened with that desk. But you can see these signs of these just kind of like me not really feeling safe. But I didn't realize it at that point in the relationship. I didn't realize that I was not feeling safe with this person, but I probably wasn't. My body was probably giving me a lot of signals, which I ignored. So the thing about, let me talk a little bit about like the what my ex told me about his family was that his father was violent in his home. And there was one day when his father broke everything in the house. This is what he said, broke everything in the house, like all the glasses and plates and vases and everything. He destroyed, broke everything. And his mother had to clean up after that, right? So, and I was like, now that I'm looking back at it, I'm like, how come you had this awareness about your father, but you didn't have it about yourself at all, that you were following some of his traits and stuff. During that time, what happened next was I I think he was coming to, because we've been together for about a year already. So he was approaching his, we can say, like, second semester of his master studies. So as he approached the second semester of his master studies, he was telling me, oh yeah, he had his father wanted him to go back to Iran for some reason and didn't want him to pursue his degrees in Malaysia anymore, wanted him to go back to Iran and run and follow his business. Yes, that was the situation. But he wanted to continue studying engineering in Malaysia because he had big plans for his career, right? So he didn't want to go back. So his father kind of cut him off. And so he wasn't able to pay for the next semester of his master's studies. And so I said, is there anything I can do to help you? Maybe I can help with the studies, with paying for that, because I really want you to pursue your dreams and your goals. That was where I was coming from. And he was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And so not only was the only one paying rent every month, but I also paid for his master's studies, his master's semester tuition fees. Okay, so that's where we've come to the first year. I think that he finally met my parents. So at that time, my dad and my mom were living in the northern parts of Malaysia. So we traveled there to meet them. And I remember this incident very well. I didn't realize it at that point, but afterwards, my mom told me about it, that she was feeling something intuitively off about this guy. Because so we went to meet my parents and we were like sitting there together, around like the coffee table in the living room. And then my ex said to me, "I'm really thirsty. Could you get me a glass of water?" And so I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure, I'll get you a glass of water." So I walked over to the kitchen and got him a glass of water. And then my mom and my sister were looking at each other like, is Tan like his slave or something? But yeah, they never said anything to me at that point. But they did tell me this incident and this feeling like they had felt that something was off later on. After I had broken up with him already. But yeah, and I think my dad didn't like him either because he didn't make conversation with my dad at all. Like I remember I once saw them sitting in the living room together and nobody said anything. It was just like silent. Like I was getting dressed, to go out or something, and he was just sitting on one sofa. My dad was sitting on another sofa, and nobody said anything to each other. So I think my dad was like, I don't like this guy. But yeah, so that was when he visited my parents. I never met his any of his parents in person. I think I did some video calls with his brother and with his mom, and they were nice. Like they were just like his mom was like a kind woman, a kind soul. So I think that a large part of me had a lot of compassion for my ex, and but at the same time, I think what ruled, the excuses that I was making throughout this relationship was that I felt bad for this person and I had to help him. I had to be a savior in many ways, which that is a really big part of codependency. So I can't remember why, but I think maybe the apartment that we were staying in was too expensive that I even couldn't like really pay for it. So we moved out into another apartment. Maybe it was cheaper or something. I'm not sure. Maybe it was just the Oh, I think it was like the location or something. I think my ex had a problem with that location as well. Like he felt that it was unsafe or something. Yeah, anyway, so we moved to another location and had a new apartment, which I was still the only one paying for rent, by the way. Um, yes. And there was this other incident. I think we went to one of my colleagues together. We went to my female colleagues, by the way, not my male colleague, because that would never pass, but my female colleague's house for a family gathering or something. And I didn't realize at that point, but apparently he called me stupid in front of all of my colleagues at that gathering, which I didn't realize he did that. But I think my colleague told me afterwards that she didn't like my ex because he called me stupid in front of everyone. But I can't really remember that event very well, but there was that one as well. But yes, anyways, so we moved to the new apartment. And I think at that time I wanted to sort of get a diploma for teaching English, which they also call the Delta, if you're familiar with it. And so, in order to do that, I had to go to Thailand for 2 or 3 months. I can't remember. I think it was 2 months, um, full time to study and to get this diploma. So that was the situation was that my ex would just stay in Malaysia and I would be in Thailand for 2 months. So what happened was I was in Thailand for 2 months doing this diploma's degree. And that distance that I finally had away from him gave me so much clarity about the abuse, the toxicity, the codependency in this relationship. And in a way, it's kind of saved my life. But yeah, so what really helped me when I was in Thailand alone was that I was watching a lot of astrology videos, and specifically by Jewel Mayberry. She also calls her channel is Truth and Aspect Astrology, and she talks a lot about relationships, synastries, and composite charts. And I found that in my composite with my ex, we had a Venus opposite Pluto, along with Mercury opposite Pluto and the Sun opposite Pluto. So it was a very plutonic relationship. And I was like, and something hit me inside. Like my intuition opened and things became very clear, about what kind of a relationship I was in and the darkness that I did feel since the beginning, but choose to ignore. I was in Thailand and I met up with some old friends. And I met up with, there was I went for like lunch. There was two female friends and one friend who was a man, but he was gay. And so my ex saw a photo that one of my friends posted on Facebook of us having lunch together and said, "Who's this guy?" Oh gosh. And so I thought, oh, so I thought I would just tell him the story. I was like, this is my friend that I've had since high school. We've been friends since high school. We were very close in university. We went to the same university, and he's also gay. And that was even more triggering for my ex because he was like, I don't like gay people. So I think that was really the end of it for me. Like, I really cannot be with somebody who is against. This is just disgusting to me now. So I think he tried to break up with me while I was at the airport going back to Malaysia. He said, when you come back, just take your key. When you come back, I will give you your keys and then I'm done. I'm leaving. I cannot be with somebody who is lying to me all the time and, doesn't even tell me that they're going out with a gay male friend. I was like, oh, I don't know. It was just all really twisted, right? So, so I was crying on the flight going back. I was like, what? Like he just broke up with me, whatever. But then I got back to Malaysia and he didn't break up with me. He came to the airport to pick me up and was like, let's just forget about everything. This is the way that things tend to be, is let's forget about it, When he gets violent with the things and the objects in my house, let's just forget about that, Let's just forget about it. So he was like, let's just forget about, our fight earlier and just go back to normal. Um, I couldn't go back to normal anymore. I felt that the 2 months that I'd spent in Thailand doing my own thing, my own independent thing, like really focusing on my goals, that was freeing. I felt freedom and I felt powerful and I felt independent. And I realized that when I came back to him, there was just this aura and this energy of darkness and suffocation and not being able to grow or evolve as a person when I was with my ex, that was the feeling I had there. Because when I went to Thailand, I was looking at a lot of like astrology videos and stuff, right? So I came back to Malaysia and I continued to do that. And he thought astrology was dark magic and witchcraft and told me to stop studying astrology. So I think, yeah, this was just like, I was like, I had enough. So I told him that let's break up. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. And I wanted to tell you guys how I felt, coming back to Malaysia and continuing to live with my ex. I felt scared. I think it was a couple of weeks that this was happening where I was, you know, figuring out how I'm going to tell him, how I'm going to tell this person that I want to break up, right? I felt very scared. I felt very unsafe. Like my whole body just had like this urgency of if you're with this person, you're no longer safe. You can't be yourself. You're being suppressed. You're being abused. And I think at that time in my life, I didn't even know what abusive relationships looked like. I didn't even have any idea of what codependency meant. Like I never knew what these things were. But after watching Jules' videos and doing a bit more research, and I realized that these things actually existed and that I was in one and I need to get out. So my whole body was just so uneasy and my intuition was kicking in and it just wanted to run away. And we couldn't even um sit, like we were sitting at the dinner table and trying to eat and I was just not the same. So that's what happened. And so I said, finally, let's break up. And that really triggered a lot of things in him. When I said that, he just went crazy. You know, we had a really huge fight because I wanted to break up. And yeah, and I wanted him to leave the house, but he wouldn't leave and we were just like shouting at each other. So I started screaming because I wanted him to leave really badly. And the moment I screamed, he was like, don't scream, the neighbors are gonna hear us. Like, yeah, like that. I care at that moment. So he was concerned the neighbors were gonna hear us. So he put his hand on my mouth or my jaw or something to keep me quiet and pinned me to the ground. And um so I stopped screaming. But the next day, my whole face down here was bruised. It was purple, and I had to go to work the next day. So I had to put on a bunch of makeup to cover up my face. And I think I also like hit him, like try to push him away because I wanted to leave. I was like, get out. And so he hit me in the face, and so it got pretty violent. And of course, it was going to come down to that at some point. But yeah, so that was the story of how things ended. And so it ended with me saying that I was gonna call the police if he didn't leave the house. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention something quite important in this relationship as well was that because now I can remember it on the day that we were breaking up, was that he was going through my makeup drawer and he was saying like, why do you have this perfume here? He was saying like, now you're wearing perfume. You come back from Thailand and now you're wearing all this perfume for who? I was like, I don't have anyone. Who am I wearing it for? And he was like, you never used to wear it before. Like I used to ask you to wear perfume for me, but you never wore it. So these kinds of things, like I used to ask you, like he would ask me to wear these clothes and don't wear these clothes. Like some of my clothes, he would say makes me look like a grandmother. Don't wear that. Wear this instead. Wear red. And so on and so forth. So that was something that was also happening there. So that was the end of the relationship. And after that, I remember after he moved out, I was trying to redecorate my entire apartment. And make it look more feminine and make it look more me so that I can just like forget about everything. And I was trying to do a lot of healing work. Um, but it was like really, really hard after that. And I think it took me a few years after that to really be healed from it. Fun's here again. So I wanted to talk to you guys now just a little bit about like codependency and abuse and like this type. I see women being in an abusive relationship time and time again in the modern day. And I ask myself, why? Because I can understand, like, if you look at in the past, like in 17th century, for example, women were economically dependent on men. And that's how codependency began. Because women were not able to be financially independent on their own, and life was hard, back in 17th century. So some women would withstand toxic or abusive behaviors in men just because they couldn't be on their own. But that's not the way that things are anymore nowadays. But I think that there's something within the collective ancestral bloodlines, collective, as a collective here, collective ancestral bloodlines that instills that codependency still within us. So that's one of the things that I want to say from this situation. Now, the other thing is there's a lot of people in the spiritual community who are in these kinds of abusive relationships where there are signs of like in my story, there were signs of isolation, financial abuse, violence, like physical abuse. It starts with objects. It starts with things that happen around you. Um, Sexual. It's kind of like sexual forcefulness, in the sex life. It's estranged sexual life, emotional abuse. These are signs that I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who are in this and they know that they should not be in it. But sometimes spirituality messes with us. Because some people are going to think, that person is my twin flame. That person is my soulmate. I've got to have compassion for them. And I want to tell you that you don't need to be with a person who does these things to you. You can be a compassionate person. You can have soulmates everywhere. You can have epic loves. And I made a video about twin flames previously as well. You can have epic loves elsewhere. You don't need this person to be with you. If you're in an abusive or toxic or codependent relationship and you use spirituality as a way of staying in that relationship, just know that you're now using spirituality as an excuse. Because what's actually happening when we're in codependent relationships is that we don't have a solid sense of self-esteem and self-worth and self-love. Subconsciously, we think that if we left this partner, this abusive partner, we would not be able to find anyone else for us. You see how low we think we are. So if you think that this is the best you can do, you've got a really, really low sense of self-worth. You don't see how amazing you are. You don't see how lovable you are as men or women, because it's not just women that are going to be in abusive relationships. Men can really be in abusive. Some women can really be extremely abusive, by the way. But whoever you are, like if you are in these types of relationships, you really don't see what you're worth. And one of the things that can really help you see what you're worth is to be independent, is to really have something for yourself, something that belongs to you that you don't want to or don't ever want to give away. And when I was in this relationship, in this story that I was telling you guys, I didn't have that, you know? I didn't have a purpose. I didn't have meaning in my life. I didn't have something that I was really proud of or that I was pursuing. And so it just made it easier to feel like this is the best that I can do. And I think that there's also with when we're talking about the collective ancestral bloodlines and the karma that's coming from the collective ancestral bloodlines, I think we're also looking a little bit here at the idea of divorce and how that's really been frowned upon in the past. But nowadays, that process, those procedures are so much easier and it's not as frowned upon as before. And please, like, please do not look down upon people who have gotten a divorce. If somebody was in this kind of abusive relationship and they got a divorce, say congratulations to them. Tell them how amazing they are, that they stood up for themselves and got out of this. Don't put them down because societally, it's not acceptable to get a divorce. And yes, I know that it can be hard to leave behind something that maybe you've been attached to or involved with for so many years of your life. But at least you would have stood up for your values and for yourself. And that is to be honored and to be respected. That makes the world a better place. And I think I kind of skipped over this as I was talking about it, but I was talking about how we sometimes use spirituality and twin flames and soulmates, and compassion as a way of or healing, like let's heal together, as a way of as an excuse. And I wanted to share a little bit about what I meant by that. So what I mean by that is that I think that what lies behind that is actually a lack mentality. And see, the thing about codependency that we get wrong is that we think that by supporting or wanting to heal another person when they're displaying abusive or toxic behaviors, that we're giving them love and compassion, but actually you're not doing that. You're actually enabling them to continue their toxic behaviors and their toxic patterns and their abuse. You're enabling them to continue to be the worst version of themselves. If you cut that off, if you cut off that relationship, you let them go free, you let yourself go free. Not only are you standing up for yourself and you're an honorable and respected person, but you're also allowing that person to actually do the healing that they have to do. That's when they will actually get a click in their brain to do some kind of healing work. That's when you're actually showing them love. That is when you're saying, I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to set you free so that you can actually go and heal. Because as long as they're still in your aura, as long as they're still in your energy fields, they will continue to persist in the way that they have persisted. So, lack mentality is really something that lies underneath the excuses that we make here with soulmates and twin flames and healing. It's actually coming from a lack mentality, coming from the fact that you don't think, like if you're in this situation, that you may not think that you could do any better. And I think I already touched on this as well. And if you continue to feed your life and your relationships with lack mentality, lack will come in all areas of your life. You will feel lack in your career. You will feel lack in your money situation, in your prosperity field. You will feel lack in your self worth, in who you are. You will continue to feel incompetent in yourself. You will feel like you're never enough. There's billions of people out there in the world for you. What are you talking about? The world of dating has never been more open and easier to access than it is now. There could even just be somebody right in front of you under your nose in your neighborhood that's going to be easier for you, that's going to be make you happier than the relationship you're in now, but you just don't see it because you're in lack mentality. So yeah, I think that that's like some of the things that I wanted to share today. And I tend to get really fired up about this topic because I've seen so many people who just, I'm like, why are you in that relationship? But I can't do anything about it. As a human design projector, I can't give unsolicited advice. I'm just like watching them and I'm just like, and because of this relationship, and there's also another relationship that I've been in that was very toxic as well. After coming out of these two relationships, I feel like my radar for abuse and toxic relationships is on. And I and when it's on, it's on. Like I can sense that coming, not to me, but like to the people in my life. I can really sense that that's what's happening to them, but I can never say anything, of course, unless they ask. But yeah, that's it for today, beautiful souls. I hope you enjoyed this story time video, and I'm looking forward to making more of these storytime videos with you guys. If you have any stories that you'd like to share, you can comment below, or you can send me a private message or a private email. All my contacts are in the description box below that you can open up. So yeah, that's it for today. And if you guys are interested in getting a reading from me or from anyone on my team, we would love to be opening you up, helping you open up to your self-discovery journey. You can visit my website and browse around there as well. So that's it for today, beautiful soul. Sending everyone lots of love and independence and peace. Bye.